Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome this morning. That's what's going on. Okay. But anyway, welcome this morning. It is June 19th, 2022, Father's Day, if you will. And how could I not talk about Father's Day, especially when it comes to comics? Because when it comes to comics, when you really think about everything that took off in comic books, it did all start with Superman. And it's really easy to sit there and talk about Superman starting everything. But if you go forward to that, it all actually started with the love of a father being brave enough and crazy enough, maybe, to take a little precious baby, put him in a rocket, and shoot him off to a planet, hoping that somebody will take care of him. And that's where the big phenomenon really started with the superheroes and everything that came after that and stuff, right? Um, so, of course, Father's Day should be something big when it comes to comics, right? So today's going to be, I don't know, probably maybe about an hour show. If that, we got things to do this afternoon. I've been under the weather the last couple of days, and today was the first day I felt like actually doing something. So we're going to be talking about my favorite series and Superman, a little bit about fathers and sons and stuff, right? And Father's Day is real interesting, man. So I'm glad that there's people out there that are joining in, whether you're a father, stepfather, surrogate father, and stuff. But with me personally, Father's Day was never a really big deal. I didn't meet my biological dad till I was 18. Meanwhile, in the house, I sort of had a stepdad who I try to give credit to, because if it wasn't for him and my uncle and several other people having comic books, magazines, books, and everything in the house, left my own devices a lot, none of this would have really happened. So that's what's going on. And then also for me, looking back on it, as I got older, I learned to play chess, Uno games, a little bit of sports and things like that from friends of the stepdads and stuff. Right? He had a little clique, about 4 or 5 of them that were friends for well over a decade and stuff like that. And it would be them spending that time with me that kind of balanced out the things, because believe me, reaching down to find the stepdad some credit here is pretty tough, man. Not a nice man and stuff, right? Which is why some of them sort of shot off in other directions over the years and stuff to kind of get away from them. But anyway, it's the presence. It's the presence of a male figure in the home for a son, that it is important and stuff, right? I can honestly say I probably learned more by how people reacted than how they acted. Okay. And to put this into comic book terms, Superman and Batman, one of the reasons they probably really wouldn't hang out that much to begin with is Batman could actually be the result of a lack of love due to his parents being killed and things like that. And then you had Superman, who had Jonathan and Martha Kent, of course. And also he still had Jor-El, his father, as years went by and they started adding things to where Jor-El sort of laid out ways to talk to his son and stuff, right? So there's always like these closures and fatherly advice and stuff like that. So anybody that this is Father's Day and you're spending the morning with me, yeah, I appreciate it. That's awesome. Um, and yeah, just be nice to somebody, man. Remember, maybe think back about your father, whether he's with us or not or anything. We live in a time where a lot of the times the man is the bad guy nowadays, and anybody that's in the real world knows that's a crock of shit. Um, but I don't think part of being a man is that you do what you need to do, and you really don't expect a pat on the back, but you sure as hell don't expect anything thrown in your face. Hey, what's up? Okay, so when we get into these little books, I'm going to go through real quick. Let's say hello to everybody. John is here. What's up? But yeah, guys, like, sub, share the video and stuff. Let people know we're here. Give a little bit of time for some more people to get in here. All right, so glad you could catch a live show, man. Awesome. And of course, we got the Breen in there this morning. All right, that is the celebrity of YouTube. Click a comic book channel. You're probably going to see the man there and check out his own channel. Awesome. So what really amazes me as comic book collectors and stuff is 1938, Superman debuted. Um, I couldn't find my tabloid edition. I'm not sure what's going on. So let's get into the comics here. Who wants to look at my mug? Let's be honest here. There we go. Oh, we got a little bit of a glare. We'll have to work on this lighting one day. So the big two guys that we're going to be talking about is Starman and, of course, Superman. Couldn't find my tabloid edition, so we're going to have to go with this Millennium edition, right? Starman, I'm going to walk through just a few books here to kind of talk about how these two characters actually sort of connect. I love how this is from the 30s. This was from the 90s, and it still carries on. With its fan base into the 2000s, with interviews I read about Tony Harris, Starman, thankfully still has a ton of fans. But basically, we got Superman, right? And these two books, one of the themes that runs through them is fathers. Starman actually goes quite a bit into legacy and a relationship with the father, and how you can fall in and out and realize that your father is a person, feet of lead. They are human. As a kid, we tend to look at fathers and parents in general pretty much like superheroes. Our world is them. And then as we get older, I think some of the conflict comes in is that we start losing that hero worship of them a little bit as we grow up. And then we go through a stage where we realize that our parents and our fathers and stuff are human. They have flaws. They have feet of clay, if you will. And that's quite a bit. And that's a lot of what goes on in Starman. But what really amazes me when it comes to comic book collectors, I really wish I had better lighting this morning. I don't know what the deal is it amazes me how many people actually have not gone back or had the opportunity or even thought about going back and looking at the actual pages, the origin of Superman. There's not a lot to it. That's one of the reasons why things have been added over the years that we haven't been. It's actually a 2-page strip. We start with the rocket. We just see Krypton blowing up. We don't even see Jor-El and his mother Laura. We pop right in there with the Kents finding him, seeing that the baby has superhuman strength. It doesn't really say that it comes from the sun. There's not a lot to it. They adopt him. The kid grows up, and then we get a quick rundown about his powers going. Now, there's a book about Hugo Danner, I think. Hugo Weaver. And I watch me go blank. But it's a Philip Wiley book called Gladiator. And to a certain extent, this really matches that story of a book from the 20s, a novel that really influenced a lot of comics called Gladiator. And the Philip Wiley estate has actually seen one of my videos from years ago where I made a video called From Gladiators to Superman, talking about this, right? So there's not a whole lot here. And of course, this was back in the 30s when they were figuring all this stuff out, and they weren't trying to do comic strips for newspapers. That's it. That's the thing about Superman. So over the years, they would expand on that through the radio shows, through the comics, and they would actually break what could have been a loose continuity back then by introducing Superboy and stuff, right? And then it would be a few years later, 50th anniversary, where we got a little bit of a reboot of Superman thanks to Crisis on Infinite Earths. And the first thing that John Byrne did was come out with a 6-issue miniseries that came out weekly. And we get to see the new version of Krypton, a la 80s and stuff. This would later be followed up by the World of Krypton 4-issue miniseries that John Byrne would write, and Mike Mignola, before he was a huge, huge superstar, would come in and draw it. But we would see this very cold, desolate little Earth. And what he's done is that what John Byrne did is that he's showing that if Kal-El had continued to had been born and grown up on Krypton, he would have been in a very sterile and cold environment. Kryptonians have they have these skin tight black suits, a la Dune, if you will, that takes care of their body, recycles their sweat and all this stuff. And everybody lived in their own little fortress, if you will. Everybody was very isolated. They would talk through screens and stuff like that. And Jor-El had this thing in him about this love of a son that was very human, that Kryptonians no longer had, in this very sterile world and environment and stuff. And when he meets Laura, he actually has feelings for her, but she doesn't have those. And in this little chamber is their baby. They don't even have babies in the womb, if you will. They're, you know, very scientifically mixed in a bowl, if you will. And Jor-El has broke a huge protocol to where even Laura is just amazed. And we have unrequited love here. She's just like chastising him, and he's trying to talk about him having a life. He shows where he's going to send him, Earth. And Laura is, of course, like shocked and surprised because she's seen a bare-skinned, bare-chested man touching the dirt with sweat on his body. That's how sterile this planet is. That's shocking and stuff, right? So as the planet blows up and he's trying to kind of talk about having feelings for Laura a little bit and a few other things, it just never happens, and the world blows up and we are shot into space back with Superman, a la the first panel of Superman ever. And we have Superman in Kansas. Now, a lot of people like to say this is a story of immigration. This is also the story of Moses from the Bible about sending the baby down the river, things like that. But as I've gotten older and decided that I want to do a little research, I'm wondering if it's more of a refugee situation. Okay. Oh, what do we got here? Oh, happy Father's Day. Nice. Bryn's laughing. Yeah. All right. Great to see Gore Vidal here. Red Star Man for the first time 3 years ago. Loved it in my top 10. Loved the first couple of arcs. Hooked me as I lost my father at an early age. Then the Shade hooked me as he was so sinister. All right. And the Starman is something I recommend you reading from beginning to end. Okay. Because I'm just picking out excerpts here about one of the many themes out there. Hey, Paolo's here. What's up, brother? Good to see you Friday night there, man. Awesome. I was half asleep and he saved my bacon with some memories and stuff, right? So we get to Starman here, right? And actually, I'm not going to start with Starman number 0, but we're going to start with Stars and Stripes number 0. Became a little bit of a hot key book, you know, a little bit because of Stargirl getting her own show and stuff. But one of the great things about the Starman book is that it's also about legacy. James Robinson messed around with Starman a little bit in the Golden Age miniseries. And even though that was an Elseworld story, he had a few things going on with Starman of the Golden Age proper, and he sort of carried it over with Tony Harris with Jack Knight taking over, right? So just to kind of introduce you to what was going on in the world, that he shows that he had a plan. We have a bit of a flashback here in Stars and Stripes. Okay. But we have a Golden Age Starman here proper, looking at pictures and reminiscing and thinking of things. And he's remembering the original Star Spangled Kid coming back. And he's wearing the belt that Starman had wore for him. When Roy Thomas had brought back, maybe it was Paul Levitz in the 70s in All-Star. Well, I can't remember. Anyway, All-Star Spangled Kid has equipment made by the original Starman. He didn't exactly have a power rod, but he had a belt, and eventually he became Skyman, and I think he might have had the cosmic rod. And then he's talking about how Jack, we bump into Martin times, and here's Jack running around with Stars and Stripes and everything. But Jack has quite the history. Jack had a brother named David, and David was actually the chosen one. And any kind of alternative scene there was for Starman, for Jack, if you will, he was the opposite. He likes the bright colors of the 40s. He refuses to wear a costume because they look silly, yet at the same time, his dad was his hero when he was a kid. And as they got older, there's a Brave and Bold issue where it's Starman and Black Canary teaming up a little bit and stuff. And James Robinson brought that story out to where they were having an affair and they were caught. And that's probably where Jack started losing it for his dad. And of course, their mother was much different than their father, the original Starman here, right? Because he was a scientist and atheist, and his mother, his wife, if you will, was more of the artist. Okay, the exact opposite. We never really see her. So he's flashing back and thinking about, like, now we're in the 70s, and any alternative scene and artistic thing that was going on, Jack was part of. He's part of the punk scene of the 70s and stuff, right? Skyman, and this is probably early 80s and stuff. So he's part of that alternative post-punk scene as well. But he's also going his own way and his own path, and his dad is not giving him what he needs. his support and everything. He just kind of looks at him. David is doing what he's supposed to do. We have the return of Star Spangled Kid coming out of a sort of a hibernation, if you will. We'll just leave it at that. And he's come by and, he's around all these superheroes and his son that's doing things. And Jack's over here like, look, I'm here to get stuff out of my room. I've got a guy who's going to give me a car if I give him some of these old dolls that I have from the 50s and stuff, right? Jack's all about antiquing and old things, ironically, and stuff. And a bit rebellious, but he takes after his mom. So he's just being pure and nasty. Part of the Starman series is seeing Jack become more at peace and reconnecting with his father and becoming nicer and stuff, not having to etch on his own and stuff, right? So, pretty much he knows his dad is probably just not liking him and very disappointed with him. And that's the thing. That's what's amazing about Starman is that we actually go on this journey in the background where Jack is asked to carry on the legacy after his son dies. David dies. David actually took over for an issue or two. And we start out with Starman number 0 right off the bat with being introduced to Opal City based on Asheville, North Carolina, we find out. And here's David ready to go out and do his first real patrol. He's popped up in a Starman series that was going on with Roger Stern, and I think Tom Lyle might have been drawing that. But anyway, he popped up in that for an issue. And then he gets in here, and the first thing we have is that he is shot. The prodigal son is dead and gone, right? So it comes down to everybody, Jack and his dad meet up because he is dead. Jack is running his antique shop, doing his thing, very estranged over years, and he's asked to take it over. And he's sitting there like getting fatherly advice whether he doesn't do it. A lot of things going on, a lot of history there that you're already feeling is there, a lot of reasons that Jack does not want to be with his father, and his father also resents Jack quite a bit for not really following his footsteps. And then as the story goes along, Jack starts remembering how he used to run around the yard with a towel and a stick pretending to be his dad. We shoot way up here. This is where the Superman Starman connection comes in, right? Jack decides that he will carry on the legacy of Starman in Opal City if his dad promises to use his science to better the world. His cosmic rob, he gets energy from the stars that could be free energy. This ends up tying into everything that you see in the Legion of Superheroes with their force fields and their flight rings and their belts and everything like that. All of a sudden, James Robinson has done the story to where Starman becomes a very pinnacle, really important to the DC universe, even going into the future, all the way up to the Legion. And as there's a storyline where he ends up going off into space to save a Will Payton Starman who's trapped up. They find out that he's out in space somewhere. He didn't really die. Well, he went out into space at the end of his series, and now Starman's going to go out there. And he ends up meeting the Legion and Superman and the Justice League. And this is actually why Tony Harris left the story. He wasn't real keen on taking Jack Knight out into space. The actual creative difference, if you will. Let's check everything up here. Hey, thanks, John. We winged it as always, Breen. I have the car recharging now. Oh, no. Okay. So basically, this is actually what kind of brought me back into Starman. Starman got taken off the... a lot of things happened between now, when this book came out, and things that were going on in my life. But this was the issue that sort of brought me back and had me collecting probably about 2 years of back issues and stuff, right? So anyway... Jack Knight ends up in space, and they end up messing around with time somehow, right? And what we have here now is that we have Jor-El. He ends up on Krypton. And we get to see that there is a computer program that's going on that has replicated the personality of Jack's father. So now he's out in space with a 70s Starman who's very Bowie-like, Ziggy Stardust days, if you will. Jack Knight and a computer hologram of his father. And is that not always the way? If you really want to be able to talk to somebody and get along, you really have to get stuck with them sometimes, be out somewhere. This is why camping trips are important, road trips are important. you have to get stuck with somebody. And Jack really comes to peace, a lot of peace with his father by being stuck with him in a ship with a little bit of a mediator in between. So they've ended up on this world, and it turns out to be Krypton. And Jack ends up meeting Jor-El, right? A teen Jor-El. And we find out that he's having some of the same problems with his father because Jor-El is very different. He's very curious. He wants to go out and get his hands on to do his research. And Jack and Jor-El are able to talk, and it's actually because, and the Kryptonians want to take these humans and dissect them, if I remember right. You know what I'm saying? But we come to find out, we see the picture for Man of Steel, #1. And it's thanks to Jack in getting to know his father that they're able to present the math to Jor-El to tell him how to find Earth, because binary is a universal math. There's sci-fi there, right? So if it wasn't for Jack and his father spending time and working through some of their issues and doing all this stuff, we wouldn't have gone back to have Superman arriving on Earth in 1938 in our comics. So that's how you do a retcon. That's how you write a story and change things, right? So it's the power of the father and the son. It's the thanks to Jor-El, having love for his son, wanting him to survive and be on a planet and carry on the race and everything, or whatever he was thinking, right? We even have, and I'll tell you what, reading this series, seeing Jack and his father laughing together was a big moment, if you really followed this. So, yeah, that's basically the gist of it. Jor-El had been in the same situation with his father, seeing things from the outside, doing a little projection on what's going on, being that little bit of a rebellious and making peace with his father. So it doesn't end there. And I haven't read this part in years, so we're going to be winging it, man. But years later, this is issue 51. By issue 75, Jack's back on Earth. Opal City had been raided and pillaged while he was gone. And they had to save the city, and it was about a year-long story. And then all of a sudden, in issue 75, word had gotten out that he had been to Krypton and had met Superman. Oh, what we got here? Kit Walker, the first Phantom, became a dawning legacy for his heirs. It's fascinating how every son and at times daughters took on the Phantom mantle for over 400 years. Absolutely legacy. That's the theme. Absolutely. So sons and fathers is what this story is called, and it's where Superman flies up next to Jack, and he gets to tell him about meeting his father. And Jack, they end up sharing it, right? So Starman and Superman. Superman, bright, flashy costume. Jack refuses to wear a costume, but wears a jacket and goggles because they're functional when he's flying around. Hawaiian shirts, old ties, and everything. Two people who couldn't be more apart. But sadly, Jack has lost his father. He has died. He's remembering everything that he's experienced. We're getting caught up with all the other stories that happen outside of Starman as he remembers what's going on. And I think he goes to the funeral and everything. Everybody's talking about how the original, he's bad. And now Jack has found himself being a father. The Mist had a daughter who ended up taking over the Mist. And she actually RAPD'd the Starman and had his son just to emotionally abuse him and emotionally take him down and to just torture him in his mind, saying, I have your son and I'm going to raise him to be evil. And I wanted to raise him to hate you. Well, Jack ends up, by becoming a father, he ends up understanding his father more. And things have led to where he ends up getting his son. This will actually lead to Jack retiring from Starman to be a full-time dad, okay, which is fantastic. So now he's reflecting back pretty much on the whole series and his whole journey on having peace with his father, reconnected with him, losing his father, and finding himself to be a father on his own now. And I tell you what, that is a true thing. Except with me, it was with my mother, understanding quite a bit by ended up being a parent. So it can be very touching. I think you can read this as a young person with not a lot of responsibilities. And I think you can read this when you enter your next stage of life where you have responsibility. And then when you're a father, and then probably when you've lost a parent or you become a parent and lose a parent and stuff, right? So this could, comics could be pretty deep stuff. I'm sure there's novels and books like that we can talk about. So then all of a sudden we have Superman showing up at the same time. Superman has lost his parents. I can't remember with all the reboots and stuff. I'm pretty sure John Kent may have already died and come back like in issue, what was it, 500 of Action or whatever it was. I don't know. But at this time period in this story where they've done all this stuff over the last 25, 30 years, I don't know if Kents are alive or not. But, he does have Jor-El. And they end up having this very fantastic talk as you read the series and led up to the series and getting a callback where we have two sons who have lost parents and been through some stuff, having very heartfelt talks. I have records of my father. Over the years, I've amassed quite a collection of holograms. Jack ended up traveling with his father for like a year in space with a hologram of his father. The themes and the connections and the dots are here. There's a conversation that James Robinson has done fantastically where this makes perfect sense, even though we're talking about holograms, I've amassed quite a collection of holograms of my life on Krypton. In this way, I've met my father after a fashion. But the person I know is Jor-El, this man. I don't know what he was like at the age we met him. I'd like to, at the age you met him. He says, your father, he was a good guy, but I guess you know that. Oh, and he was a seeker. When we first met, it was on the Kryptonian wastelands there. He was exploring a stranger in his own strange land, and I doubt he was ever happier. And you can see the expressions on Superman as he's hearing the things that aren't recorded in those holograms and stuff of his father, seeing the real person, the emotion that's affecting him. No matter how estranged you become from your family, no matter how much of a black sheep you can feel in your family. And even if you're on the other side of that spectrum, no matter how well you think you do know your parents and your father and stuff like that, you're going to find out that they're human and there was sides of them that you did not know. And then you start seeing yourself in them, right? And then he says he met his grandfather too. He's like, you met my grandfather too? Your granddad, sour-faced and so-so, that he was nevertheless had the goodness in his heart to demand that instead we were, wait a minute. He was nevertheless had the goodness of heart to demand that instead we were to be made prisoners, living prisoners in the house of El. Your father then helped us escape. And this is where we get like into symbolism and stuff like that. They were going to be physical prisoners, but are we also prisoners of acceptance of parents and stuff? Does that keep us from becoming people? Do we, Jor-El was a seeker and he had to defy his father to go out and find a path that he was seeking. Okay. Oh, and your father had light in his eyes and ways, in his ways of looking and acting. In the record I've seen, I think I look for that. The thing that set him apart from the thing that made him go against all rational wisdom, decide Krypton was doomed, and then had the further resolve to send his son into space. I've seen the fierce resolution, but not the light you mentioned. Bear in mind the man he had to become just to be living in that society. Maybe he learned it was easier to function there if he did it that way. But the younger man I met had it in spades: light, wisdom beyond his years, and the breadth and vision to look far. So Superman had questions about how can you stick a baby in a rocket and go on. And that's when we become older ourselves and get a perspective of like our parents have always had to make really hard decisions, not just for them, but for you, the family, things like that. Fathers and mothers both and stuff, right? So if there was ever a Father's Day issue, it'd probably be issue 75 of Starman, of seeing two people who are having a talk that only the two of them could have. And they're both seeing things in their fathers and revelations. Everything Jack has learned and led up to and making peace with his father and then losing him, he is there for the mightiest of them all, the one that started it all because of that thread of fathers and sons. And they go on for quite a bit. Superman takes them out to a farm and stuff, and he sees Cattle, who reflects on Jonathan Kent. Then they have a talk about Jonathan Kent. Then we're here about what makes a father. Is it blood, or is it the time and being there and reflecting on things? So, if anything, these 5 books or so, or whatever I showed and stuff, actually tell a story all on their own that you can only get if you sit down and read them and see the themes, and then seeing the characters as humans, and then these characters that we're seeing as humans now having just a whole conversation about their fathers, they start realizing that their fathers were also human, not great big huge superheroes, you know. And then they learned about themselves through that legacy and stuff. Superman's father had that light in his eyes, much like Superman has, you know, the resolve. And then Jack has gone from a little arrogant little punk to where he can sit down and have this very empathetic tale and talk and be there for Superman. What's ironic is the only other time I've seen somebody sit there and have an empathetic talk with Superman was with Garth Ennis's Hitman, which is funny. So you have Starman and Hitman having a heart-to-heart talk with Superman. This shows you in life there's many things going on out there. So let's see what's out here and what's going on. Prime Collector, Starman is such a layered and deep run. Absolutely love this run. And Robinson, the Golden Age. Yeah, absolutely. They're well read. They're rereadable, if you will. And I think they still hold up with the themes and stuff that goes on in them. So basically, I think that's really all. I kind of flew through this better than I thought. I could continue doing a deep dive, but I really recommend just reading the books I showed. I think there's other issues of Starman that I always assume people are well read. They've read a lot of Superman. They've read a lot of this. They've read a lot of that. So like I said, it always kind of surprises me when I find out that people haven't had the opportunity or even thought back to go where it all started in those few little pages and stuff, right? Of the first Superman, you know, the first appearance of Superman. And it's actually just 2 pages and very simple. And then over the years of storytelling and people reading generations after generations, we end up coming up with a legacy all of its own in comic books that lead to a story like this, where we add another layer to, at this time, what was it, a 60-year-old character that still talking about parents and fathers and who raised him and why did he have to put me in a rocket. So think about that. Next time that you see a baby or hold a baby, think about the inclination of having to just throw a baby in a rocket, an experimental rocket, if you will, and shoot them off into space because of wanting them to survive a planet blowing up. It's easy to read this stuff and realize it's all fantasy and fiction and stuff, but I think there's a lot of implications. And I actually have a book over here. Hold on. And if you want to do a deeper dive on Jor-El, like I said, the father that started all this. All right. There's actually a book called The Last Days of Krypton that explains quite a few of the plot holes that people have seen about why things like, why did Jor-El not put everybody in the Phantom Zone and then shoot the rocket to Earth and then have them all released when they're there. This goes into the last days of Krypton leading up to Krypton actually blowing up. And it actually, I'm trying to remember, but I think there's a very interesting chapter here about him deciding to send Kal-El on that ship. I'm actually going to probably reread this. When did I read this? ...2007. So I probably haven't read this in about like 12 or 13 years. But it's fantastic. A little bit of slow read in places, and I'm sure there's an audio book that may be on YouTube or something like that, right? So happy Father's Day. And remember, the comics you have are all because of the fact that a father decided to put his baby in a rocket and shoot him off into space. And now look at everything that's come out of that decision, at least in storytelling and stuff, right? It's a unique way to put at it and stuff. And that's why I think Jor-El is probably the most uncelebrated hero in comics, you know. So that's just my opinion. So everybody that showed up, thank you for spending the morning with me. And I hope you guys continue to have a good day and let's be excellent to each other. And if your father is still with you and you still talk to him, give him a call, give him a shout. And if he's not, go visit wherever he's laid. You know, I could get into like a big philosophical, emotional talk here to stuff like that, but sometimes a phone call can do wonders. So, yeah, Yeah. And if you're a father, hang in there. Hang in there, man. All right. Everybody have a great weekend. Later. Be excellent to each other.